was interesting how things coincidentally happened. After we'd been having the school for maybe, I don't know, 5 or 6 years or something, I was noticing that every teacher, I mean, there were only maybe 4 of us or something, but everybody was doing handwriting a different way. And I was probably more focused on it because I've always liked handwriting. I used to do calligraphy and this and that. And so I was interested in that, but I also felt like we should all be doing the same style because it just didn't make sense to me to go from one to the next, you know. And I said, so we had the staff meeting and I'm making my plea, you know, going, I don't care what we do, let's just all do the same thing. And so we decided to look into different kinds and talk about it more later. And then that weekend I went down to the village because it was some event, you know, involved, I think maybe it was Swami's birthday or something. Anyway, there was the oratorio was happening one night, but one of my friends had gone to the boutique and had seen this book called Your Handwriting Can Change Your Life. And she was showing it to me and just like kind of, oh, here's this book I got, it looks interesting. And I sat down and started reading it, and I read through the entire oratorio.
Wow.
And I just went, oh man, why would you not want to then, they're gonna learn some form of writing, why would you not want to teach them a type of handwriting that supports their better qualities? And that system of handwriting was designed with that in mind. For each letter had a certain area that it applied to, and the specific form was designed to bring out that quality more. So I was just like, well, duh, here we are. So I took it back to the group and said, what if we do this? And they kind of said, well, okay, if you want to, you know, let's give it a shot. And because it was a print script, a lot of the letters look like cursive writing, and some of them look like printing, depending on what the letter is and what it's about. So starting to teach it to kindergartners or first graders, we had a few parents who were going, whoa, my kid can barely, you know, has terrible fine motor skills. Writing at all is really hard for him. Why are you trying to torture him with this stuff? But that same parent who said that, a year at the end of the school year, she said, you know, I should have just trusted the process. He can do it, and it's helpful to him. So anyway, so that's what we did. And because I was very enthusiastic about it, and I had gone through a process to change my own handwriting, then I don't know, I guess it was just what happened.
So this is Vimla Handwriting, right? And,
yes.
And the system, basically, from what I'm just reiterating from what you've said, there's some sort of quality that each letter has that brings out a certain quality within yourself when you're writing it, or could you, is that correct?
Yes. So for instance, V is about discrimination, and not in the sense that you discriminate against people or whatever, but in the sense that you have a clear vision of what you're talking about. And it's the letter V, and you write the letter V so that it's, I'll write it on a piece of paper and hold it up.
Okay.
So, can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's always pointed at the bottom. It kind of, well, I didn't write it too well. It kind of comes off to the right in a arc-like thing,
Okay.
but it's always pointed at the bottom, and it's always a standalone letter. And an image that can be helpful in understanding this is like when you're trying to part your hair, you know, if you just use your finger, you're going to get just something that's, you know, kind of there. But if you use like a rat tail comb, which probably
Yeah.
nobody even knows what that is anymore, but then you get a real clear line, and you know, it's just, and that's kind of the way it is. Or if you were in a field with tall grain and you had you know, if you just walk through it, you're knocking down stalks and it's kind of mushy, your trail. But if you go through with I think it's called a harrow, that's V-shaped as you're going down, it falls cleanly to the sides and you can see exactly what you're doing. You have greater clarity about it. So that is one example of a letter.
Very interesting. And so this is a whole system of handwriting that teachers can learn and teach by just getting the book?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they would. The main thing is with handwriting, if you're going to teach it, you have to do it yourself.
Okay.
And so when you're writing on the board or writing on, you know, notes to students or whatever, if you're not using it, they're not going to use it. You just know how that is. And our the person who's been the primary teacher the last few years, and it's going to be our kindergarten teacher, Melissa Hart, she just totally took to this too. So it's just fun to go into her classroom and see on her board everything written out this way.
Wonderful.
Because it's a great example to the kids and also just great for her.
Have you taught have you taught any workshops on this? Us? Yeah.
Oh yeah, not for quite a while, but I did initially for a number of years and worked, you know, we'd have auctions and stuff. And usually I'd offer a one-on-one or several of them if people wanted to bid on that, and then I'd work with them. Vimla suggests that you do like a 40-day cycle to change.
Wow, I feel like it would just be wonderful in the future if you could offer some sort of online Zoom Vimla handwriting classes for teachers. I just feel like that would be amazing.
Yeah, and then she has a workbook for teachers or homeschoolers. It was initially made for, but and one of my friends from those handwriting days, I went to a number of workshops with her as well, Susan Gavorko, has created a couple of books that have, each letter has associated with it, you know, a plant, an animal, many things, you know, a astrological sign and all that. So she made a coloring book for her grandchildren initially, but with the letter, each letter and its animal, and then like a sentence or something that they could trace or copy or whatever.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So there are some materials out there, but I created a number of things just because if the kids went through like the workbook, then 1 year, you know, then the next year, what are you going to do with them? So I created some things to have like the letters start larger and then get smaller, and have some things that if we were working with the letter, well, whatever it was, D or something, I'd have words that started with the letter D, had letter D in the middle, and some that ended with it. And I would try to pick words that had something to do with the quality. So anyway, it was fun for me to do that. And we made some cards to use with the intermediate students that had pictures of the animal on it and the letter, and then they could just go like a big deck of cards kind of, and they could go over and choose something for the day to practice that inspired them.
Do you have pictures of those cards that you made, or?
They're probably on the office computer. I mean, we just made them up on the computer and printed them out, you know, and laminated them. Yeah, we probably have them on the computer at school. And I have the worksheets that I initially made was a long time ago. So they were made using PageMaker, which probably doesn't even exist anymore. But some of them I saved at least as PDFs. Okay. So that, you know, people could utilize that if they wanted to. Yeah,
it would be great if after the interview, I mean, I was going to send you an email just asking for a few different resources that you could provide, even just links or things like that,
Mhm.
of these different things you spoke about. But if, yeah, we could have some examples or images so teachers can just kind of see what, what they could do, that would be great.
Mhm.
Neat.
Yep, that would be a possibility.
That's great. Well, is there any other particular, I'm just scrolling through your questionnaire here. Is there any other particular, anything that you feel was sort of unique to your own personal teaching style, or anything that you did that you want to talk further about, or?
Well, one thing that I think is helpful for new teachers is to, at least it made my life a lot easier, was to have a structured routine from day to day. Because kids, at least in the age group that I mostly taught, which was first, second, third grade, thrive on a certain amount of structure. You don't want to overstructure it, but you want them to know what to expect from day to day, from hour to hour, and so forth. Within that, you need to have variety, and you need to have choices for them to be able to make. Limited choices, though, because if you give most kids too many choices, they just dither,
Yeah.
But giving them a couple of choices, or what I would often say to kids who, loved to make their own choices, it's like, come up with an idea and then come talk to me about it. And if it seems feasible, great. But so one of the things that was so helpful to me was having thematic units. So we would have a particular theme, and I tried to include everything in all the curriculum areas for that period of time, maybe be 6 weeks or something. And there were just so many different things. We had so much fun with them. But what I would do, like I did an Arctic unit, which worked for me because I had taught school in Eskimo villages in Alaska. So I had things, for one thing, to show them and that they could feel, and wear my sealskin slippers or whatever.
Wow.
And, I was familiar with the food there and so forth. So it was not just a kind of academic. So often I see things like people teaching about native cultures and you're just cringing, going, oh man, for one thing, it's not accurate, but also it just seems, I don't know, weird. But anyway, so that was fun. But before I'd start any unit, I would first of all think, what is it that I want them to get from this? Appreciation of other cultures, do we need to really work on cooperation a lot? What is it? So I would meditate and I would just put that question out there, what, And so then I would try to, when I had some sense of what that was, and it could be based on their interests, my interests, what I thought the group needed. So all those things. And then I just would get a big piece of paper and colored markers and pencils and everything. And I would just create a curriculum map of, I'd write down things like, okay, what kind of songs are we going to sing? What games are we going to play? What factual information do I want them to know? What sorts of writing prompts are we going to have? What books will we read? What resources do I have, for one thing? But also, what can we come up with? How will math play into this? And everything. And I also would want to take into consideration flow learning, not only for a particular day's lesson, but for the whole unit. I wanted to start with awakening enthusiasm. It's like, we're going to start something new, woo, and we'd want to end with some kind of shared inspiration. Sometimes we would make these things. I'd seen a thing at an educational bookstore, for making what they called pocket books, where you take a 12 by 18 piece of construction paper, and you'd fold it halfway up, you know, so it would form a pocket and staple you'd make a book out of that, and maybe you'd have 4 or 5 pockets, and each pocket would have certain things in it. One time we did an ocean unit, and some of the pockets might be marine mammals. One might be plants, one might be whatever. So whatever you did that would fit in a pocket would go in there. So, and then at the end, we invited the kindergarten class over and shared our books with them and showed them the things we'd made, the writing we'd done. Kids read them their stories. And as much as I could, I would, with their help, decorate the classroom. So when we did an ocean unit, we had colored saran wrap, you know, you can get it in blue and green and stuff. And I had a big, you know, sheets and stuff all tacked to the ceiling, and then that covering it. And then we made crepe paper, not crepe paper. What's that stuff you do with glue and newspaper?
Oh, paper mache?
Yes, paper mache. We do it over a balloon, half a balloon, and then that would be our sea creature. I'm losing my vocabulary. I must be getting on. But anyway, jellyfish, and then we curl ribbon or crepe paper streamers or whatever to go on it, and had them all painted, and we'd hang those from the ceiling. So it's like we were living under the ocean, and we'd have kelp and so forth. And then maybe on the leaves of our kelp, if it was a kind that had leaves, we'd write certain things, like maybe things we noticed about each other in the classroom that were helpful acts that people did, or qualities that were especially helpful to the group as a whole. You know, people were being kind or patient or whatever. And different writing projects, we'd always have them become part of the underwater world. And so it was really fun to bring over the kindergarten men and have them experience whatever we've been working on.
I can just see that. I can just see how, you know, engaging that must have been for them. But you also mentioned, so I just want to sort of share back with you what you said. So basically in the beginning, for each unit, you would kind of create a map, and you would map out sort of the activities and different things you wanted to do for that particular unit, and what activities you'd sort of cover. And then to get the kids interested in this new unit, you said you used flow learning. So what are the steps of flow learning? Well,
the first one is, and this is Joseph Cornell, of course, from his Sharing Nature books, but is awaken enthusiasm. And then the second one, I'm having trouble remembering, you know, my words, but anyway, it's focusing attention. So if they're totally all enthusiastic and wild, you can't go to a real experience yet. You have to now get focused down, and then direct experience, whatever it is going to be, and then finally sharing enthusiasm.
Okay. So the sharing enthusiasm part was sharing with the kindergarten.
In that particular case, we did all kinds of things. We did a bear unit once, and we ended up having a teddy bear picnic at the park.
Oh, that's so fun.
You know, and everybody hand wrote invitations to their particular bear to come, and da-da-da. So, you know,
so nice.
It'd always be different, but always be something. I mean, share inspiration, not share enthusiasm.
Okay, so you share it outside of your circle after you've...
It could be, or sometimes we'd ask parents if they could come a little early for pickup, and, you know, they'd see their child's thing and so forth. So it might be just with each other, but always an opportunity to share the inspiration we'd gotten from whatever it was.
Nice. I love that. That just sounds like what you shared with the kids just must have been so like fun and exciting for them. At the same time, they're also learning about these things, about the Arctic or about Native people. And that's amazing. Love that.
It was a lot of fun. And, you know, I'd always get to the end of a unit, and then I go, oh gosh, I should have started with this instead, you know.
Mm.
But fortunately, I taught long enough that sometimes I could reuse parts of a unit at least. The thing is, the group of kids is always different. So something that you did once isn't going to necessarily work the same way another time, but at least you have already some materials gathered and some ideas in store. So
did you take any pictures of your classroom decorated like that, or?
well, probably, but you know, when we started the school, it was before digital.
Okay.
So and through the years, I think we've gotten rid of a lot of pictures. I have a few things, but yeah, it's just so different nowadays. I'm thinking, whoa! But we had to buy the film and you know, get the film processed, and then 2/3 of them would be terrible and so forth. But yeah, I have a few pictures from those days.
Nice. Yeah, it is very different now, isn't it? I mean, even
yeah, it's funny. I would talk to the kids sometimes, and I'd say, you know, now when I was your age, this didn't even exist. It's like, oh yeah, we had a telephone in our house, but 4 families used the same phone line. So you had to just pick up and listen, make sure it wasn't in use, and hang up quietly if someone else was on. It wasn't okay to listen.
amazing how fast things have changed. I mean, it's just really amazing.
Well, I just look now too at kids I've taught through the years and how old everybody is. Before we started the school and I was teaching in Alaska, well, I taught high school for a couple years. So of course those kids are now in their late 30s or, you know, 40s, and their kids are all as old as they were when I was teaching there and stuff. So
yeah.
But
it must
it's pretty fun to see.
I'm sure, like, for example, like you mentioned, Claire Potter, it just must be so interesting just to know her now as a complete adult. And
yeah, a lot has changed since she was 5 years old, you know.
yeah.
Antonia, you know, is like, okay.
Do you keep in touch with some of the families, the Gormans, for example?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Well, for one thing, Helen has been teaching at the school all these years. She just retired at the end of this school year. So she's been teaching kindergarten for all those years.
So will the physical school be opening up this fall, or what's the plan?
What the plan is at this moment in time, which is all we can talk about, because we're such a small school and we have small classes, we fall under the same as a daycare designation. So as long as we have 10 or fewer students per room, and it has to be, we have to have like 35 square feet per student or whatever, and we don't develop a bunch of cases of, you know, positive COVID, then we can be in person.
Okay, so is that?
So that's the plan at the moment.
Okay. So US schools are really, I mean, I shouldn't say US, California or wherever you're located there, or sorry, Oregon, they're saying that kids can go back to school in the fall?
Well, no, actually most of the public schools, because they can't fit those, they have to meet a lot stricter standards. And actually right now, Portland, Beaverton, and several other districts have said that they'll do remote only until at least November.
Oh, wow.
So the first couple months of school are going to be remote again. We felt like that, especially with preschool and kindergarten, with children that you don't already know. I mean, it kind of worked last year because the teachers and students had been together for the biggest part of the year. So meeting, like Melissa was meeting with her kids an hour in the morning, an hour in the afternoon online. And because they all knew each other well, that worked for most kids. Not everybody. Some kids, it was just like, that's it. But, and then she'd meet with them one-on-one on Zoom or whatever, at least once a week. But to try to develop that with kids that you don't have a connection with already, we just felt like that age probably group wouldn't. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Like preschool, what are you going to do online? You know, hello,
No.
come back.
Yeah.
It's like,
No, I think screens for them at that age is just not that interesting. I mean,
yeah,
the
yeah, it really seemed pretty
cartoon.
pointless, but basically they just kept a little connection going. I think for the preschool, I don't know what they did, maybe a story or something, you know, or
Mhm.
some kind of circle thing, but yeah. So um, we'll see what happens. You know, you just don't know from day to day what's happening. Oregon
Yeah.
is not as bad off as, say, California.
Okay.
However, we're still having quite a few new cases every day, and more than we'd like to see. It's been on an increase, but it's leveled up, but it's still higher than we want, that sort of thing. And I think 6% positivity rate on testing and stuff, which is more than
And I think
rate.
it's like seven or eight students or something. So
Hmm.
yeah,
That should be fun.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Do you know what you're going to do yet?
Yeah, I had a couple exercises. I don't know, lately with art, I'm just really going back to the basics. Like the opening exercise I wanted them to explore with modeling clay, just to have something tactile and just to be able to have something in their hand and just be very like grounded in their bodies, and maybe just creating some little shapes or little people. Or I was actually thinking of doing asking everyone to create a little garden however they want the garden to be, so maybe little flowers or trees, or they could do a picket fence or anything they want, and then moving into a painting exercise where I was just going to start with mixing colors, and then once we have all the colors, then taking a color and saying, what's the first thing that you think of when you see red, or what's the first thing you think of when you see blue, and then painting that thing. I thought it would just be a fun sort of free flow kind of thing, not too much structure, but just enough to keep them motivated. So
Hmm.
yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see what they come up with, because I can see already some of them, it's just like a blob of color, basically, because that's what they're attracted to. And for others, it'll be, maybe they'll have that too to start with, but then they'll just add all this detail to it. And some of them will
Exactly.
probably think, oh, what could I use with my garden? And, it's going to be all over the place. It'll be so fun.
Yeah, I love that. Like I remember loving teachers who would give us that freedom to just kind of really explore, but you have some boundaries, but they're very loose. Like
Mhm.
Dana, for example, I mean, she's a great example of that. She just gives you unlimited room to use your own creativity. And I really I thrive in that. So I always feel like I try to bring that when I'm working with kids that way too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I've done, she had a series going for a while recently, and I did that 5 Saturdays,
Oh,
and it
nice.
was it was just fun, but it was interesting. It took me a couple weeks to kind of relax about it all and quit trying to make something,
Mm,
to just let
yeah.
it flow, and then look at it and see, what have you got there? Maybe something, maybe nothing. But what I often found was something that I thought was just a smear of something. Later, when we came back, that would be the thing that stood out for me, that I
Oh,
would
wow.
want to embody, and to see what is that. One time I was going to take my little palette that I had my colors mixed into the sink, but it was pretty wet, so I didn't want to drip it on the floor. So I took a paper towel and just started blotting it. And I ended up doing my thing with the paper towel. You're just going, oh, look, here it all is.
Wow. I love
So
that.
fun.
That's so great.